Although it's already been almost 14 years to the day, I encountered something horrendous when I was out down in the Sonoran Desert years and years ago with a couple of close friends of mine exploring. Before you write me off as a phony for exploring the soaring heat of the desert, since it usually can get up to 120 degrees, my friends and I felt pretty acclimated and would go and explore in short bursts when we could. We've always been fascinated by the desert climate, the environment, the plants, and just the plains itself. Just being out in that environment, it brings something out of you, something that yearns to learn more about the earth itself. I only have a little bit of native in me, and I'm not exactly sure what tribe, but I have a very few close circle of friends that are full native, and it's always been our thing to go and explore the areas we can that are close by, even if it is for only short little bursts of time due to the extreme heat and dryness. Before I continue my story, I want you to know that before I did this, I was well aware of the things that live out in the desert, supposedly, like skinwalkers and other supernatural entities that are said to do harm to you. Well, during the daytime, I figured we'd be fine and didn't pose any threat or any alertness to any supernatural entities looking to do harm. That's where I had it wrong, and although I don't consider what we ran into a supernatural entity, it is something of evil, or so I believe, and my friends believe. It is not a natural creature, and had something very different about it, a different kind of energy that I can't really describe. While the Sonoran Desert is beautiful and desolate at the same time, it holds a lot of beautiful plant life and very dangerous animal life, like rattlesnakes for one, and other dangerous animals. But what we encountered this day was something I had never heard of before, although some of my native friends believe they have heard of it, and that their elders have spoken of it and even warned about it. Now that I know these creatures exist, I'll be much more careful in my explorations of the desert and the areas that I dwell around. In fact, because of this, I'm not sure I even have much of an appetite for more adventuring in the desert. What I encountered that day is what I can only describe as large desert serpent beings that are more than triple the length of us. I'm talking easily 20 feet, if not longer in length, and large enough to swallow a man whole. These were gargantuan serpents, pale white and streaks of yellow and gold, whatever these beings or serpents were. They came off as something unnatural. They carried a different energy around them, not like a typical animal you'd run into. So I don't want you to listen to this and think it's just some sort of snake we ran into. This had a totally different feel to it. And like I said, it had an energy to it, just like a foreboding energy, an omen, like you were not supposed to be around it, or that we had gone too far in an area we were not allowed to go into, which makes the entire event very interesting. At the time, nearly 14 years ago, my friends and I were not only exploring, but we had a destination in mind for our mission. One of my friends was told about a small little supposed burial ground not too far away. It sounded like it was unmarked, but it had a magic barrier around, or so we were told, and warned profusely not to go around there. My friends and I, although not being native myself, but they are, none of us really believed in that hocus pocus, or if we did, it was at a very ritualistic level, very minimal, and we never would have thought that something like this would have happened. I know, me saying this probably sounds incredibly far-fetched and out of reality, but I'm telling you, I have no desire to make something like this up. There's nothing that I can gain from it personally. My best assumption is that whatever these things were had to do in part with this burial ground that we were close to. Perhaps these things were summoned or called to be guardians of this place. I don't really know. We never really got answers, because after encountering these things, we were too scared to tell the people that told us not to go around there, so we kinda just kept it between ourselves. And even now, 14 years later, we've still kept it a secret, due to shame and punishment from our elders and our family. I can remember that it was a very hot day that day, just like every day in the desert, so there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. But I can say the direction we were going. At the time, we weren't even sure if it was the correct way to go. We were kind of just guessing, based on the loose directions we had and where it was at, judging by the general area. And finally, after getting over a small hill and almost coming into a dip in the valley, and the best way I can describe it, I'm not great at describing land, so forgive me, but we got to this dip in a very small valley, where we could almost feel the energy around us shift, and I'm not the only one that noticed it. My two friends, who I won't give names to the story, have also noticed a change. We all looked at each other at once, and told each other we can feel something different in the air. I can't even begin to describe the feeling, but it was almost like a change in the air, like an electromagnetic feeling, but that's really hard to pinpoint. The only way you could ever know is if you experienced it yourself. It wasn't long after, before we felt shakes in the ground. I'm not talking about an earthquake. I'm talking about like something big moving underneath the ground. And that's when multiple of these things appeared. We felt the light rumbles underneath our feet, coming in our direction, when these large serpents, 2 of them, burst through the sand. Massive snakes. I have never in my life seen anything so big. The only thing I can draw somewhat of a comparison to is a game called Resident Evil 1, and somewhere in that game, the main character fights this really large snake. And if you go ahead and go on Google and look it up, you could probably find it. It's been forever since I played that game, but going by my memory, the snake, or boss, whatever it was, I believed was named Yawn, Y-A-W-N, just like a yawn you do when you wake up. Now, if you see a picture of this, obviously it's a fictitious game character, but that size should give you somewhat of a good idea. The snake in the game is obviously so large that it's fictional, and the snakes we saw weren't as big. They were smaller, significantly, but not overly small to where it didn't match up. I'm trying to give you this game character because it's the only thing I could really think matches up with the size of that description, at least close. So now that you have that in your head, think that, but a pale white color, with a yellow marking down its sides and back, and a head almost resembling that of a viper, with red-yellow glinting eyes. It looked mean, and while these snakes didn't necessarily come at us to try and devour us, I got the feeling that they easily could have, had they really wanted to. They slithered around us, encircling us, as if to give us a warning. It was almost like I got the feeling and vibe to go, and to not continue further. They continued to encircle us, almost like they were sizing us up, watching us before they made their move. At some point or another, all 3 of us began to bolt out of there and back the way we came, with these incredibly large serpents, still slithering around, looking at us, sizing us up, determining what their next move was to make. We didn't give it a chance. I don't know if their plan was to attack us, and they never tried. They never moved in close, or acted hostile in any way, although I do believe their entire output of emotion and energy was stay where you are, or leave now. Had I felt like we tried to press on, even with their presence, they would have struck us, and that would have been the death of either of us, I just feel. A snake of that size, that could have been the end of us. I can't even begin to tell you their venom output. That's pretty much all there is to my story, and I understand that I'm not a great storyteller by any means, and I'm not an author or writer, so this is just what you get. But I'm sure you get a lot of crazy stories, true and untrue, and I'm not here to spread false information. I'm here to tell you that there's things in the desert that we can't always be aware of or know they exist. And usually, if there's a place you're not allowed to go or forbidden to go into because of rumors or tradition, well, there's probably a reason for it, and I believe there's more there than just old wives' tales or superstitious junk. My friends and I certainly didn't tell anybody in our communities about this. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not native, so I didn't really have anybody to tell my story to, nor would they have believed me if I did. and my two friends, well, like I said, to this day, they've kept it a secret, because had they told their families or communities, they would have been punished, scolded, and severely reprimanded. I mean, after all, we were just dumb 16-year-old kids looking for an adventure, for a thrill.